Here we are.
And welcome to Flapping Fish with Daniel Ornellas. And what a legend of a man he is. And
Thank you. So, how I feel about you?
yeah, we are legends in our own lunchtime. So the vibe with this Flapping Fish is just to hear people's stories, really, and just to talk about stuff. And I think the heart is for those people who feel a bit, they don't quite know where they fit, maybe as artists or musicians, and just straddling that weird place between the church and the music industry or whatever it is. So hopefully it's, this week we had probably the best one 2 days ago. So no pressure, dude. But Brian Houston from Northern Ireland,
I know that character. Oh yeah, he's a great dude.
Yeah.
I can tell. He's a lot. He's awesome though, man. What a king.
He's amazing. Yeah.
I love
he
that
was
guy.
just he was brilliant. So, and there was a lot of people watching who contacted me and just said I really need to hear that. So
yeah, he's part musician, part bare knuckle boxing champion.
The fighting Irish.
Yeah, man. Well, I'm excited. Let's see if there's anything that I have to share. Or
I'm sure there is, man. So just for those who don't know Daniel, because you're not a front man particularly these days. You're the guy who, you're a very good bass player, but I think you're more than that. So some people might remember Tree 63, but if you want to get the real legend, it was Naked Lyric when you were sideman, but you did step up for the lead vocals.
Yeah. We kind of split the singing probably 60-40, my sister and I.
Yeah, that's it.
In a band. Yeah, it was fun.
And what are you doing with yourself now? What do you do?
I still tour to some degree with a band with Brenton Brown. Actually, I play with him, and we mainly do corporate fundraising events for a group called the Westfall Group, which is basically cushy rich people gigs. It really is. It's an opportunity for wealthy people that are in big nonprofits to be able to come to hear the story about that nonprofit, and then respond with a gift. And we've seen crazy amounts of money. The organization that does this has raised over $1 billion in the last 12 or 15 years for Christian nonprofit event, Christian nonprofits. So it's amazing. We get to sing lead worship in between the stories and in between the keynote speakers and that kind of thing. And then there's another band called the Worship Republic, which is actually, I'm the singer in that one with another girl called Hannah Oliver. And so I lead worship for those. And so we kind of 50-50, Brenton sometimes and sometimes with the Worship Republic.
I didn't know about that. Well, I did know about the Worship Republic, but I didn't know. I'm sorry, man. I didn't know you're still a front man.
Not really. I mean, it's so little. It's probably 25 days a year. It's really, really cool. It's an interesting thing because I kind of got forced into it. Brenton quit completely for a while, and we were like the main band doing those events. So the guy was like, "How are we going to do this without you, Brenton?" And he's like, "Let Daniel sing." And he's like, "You sing?" And I was like, "Oh." So he said, "Okay, you lead the next session." And I was like, "Oh, okay." So we know Brenton played a good acoustic, I sang and led the next couple of songs. And then he was like, "Okay, do this thing." And that's from there, I kind of morphed it into another band with 3 other buddies. And the singer of By the Tree actually plays in my band, as he plays drums. And then I've got a couple, Brad Oliver and his wife Hannah, who I've been kind of nurturing, and from a young age. She was 16, I think, when I first recorded her. She's just got a fantastic voice. Her name's Hannah Oliver, and if you go and look her up on iTunes, or she's got a record called Signs of Spring. It's a little EP, 3-song EP, and she's got a fantastic voice. It's worth seeing.
Cool, man.
Listening.
Yeah, check that out. And do you run a studio, or you have a home studio?
So besides the live music, I play with people here and there. I play with Paul Balash, and I did a tour with Paul and Brian Dirksen a little while ago in Canada. And so I'll play on and off with other artists that ask me to play with them. Over the years, I've played with a lot of different worship guys, Tim Hughes and Gunga, and a lot of different bands and a lot of different people. And so whoever needs me to go out with them, I'll go out with them. But for the most part, I'm kind of here in the studio. And what I do here is I produce records for people, mostly independent people. And then I have a thing called Worship Artistry, which is it's an online platform for people to learn how to play songs like the record, like worship songs. And so we have 5 of us. There's a guitar, bass, vocals, piano, and drums, and we all in different parts of the country, and we all have a little studio set up. Like this is my little room over here behind. You can see the lights on there. And so I sit there and I just teach the song, chart it out, tabs, make loops for people to practice along to, and then they learn how to play the song. It's pretty cool.
That's cool.
And that's the only thing right now that's keeping me alive. Because there's no touring, there's no music, and my wife's got a little art gallery downstairs here and a little store, but obviously the store's closed. So we've had an interesting time with, probably like a lot of people right now, especially creatives or music people. There's some of my friends have had no income at all. Some people have had some income, and luckily I've got these worship artistry videos which I can teach a bunch of, because I'm kind of probably 100 videos behind the guitar player, because he's done so many of them. When he started, I wasn't a part of it yet, so I've got like a little backlog that I can fill up and earn some cash. Yeah, it's interesting.
But you don't really need as many with bass, do you? I mean, it's just
bass.
There's less strings, dude.
It's true.
Videos
yeah, some of those videos are glorious. Like if it's a Tomlin song or a Mad Redman song, yeah, it's like I could play them all on one string. I could play them if I was a T-Rex. But
even with small hands, you can play.
Even with tiny little hands, I can play them. But then every now and again, you get there's a band. I don't know if you know Elevation Worship.
Yeah.
Guys, there's some guy in that band. I don't know who he is, and bless his heart, he really loves to doodle, and he's a good bass player, but he's very capable. So he throws in a lot of his own vibe, and so I've got to play those all and learn them all, and I could do the same thing and just go crazy on a track, but to try and play it exactly like he did it, I don't even think he could play it exactly like he did it again. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it's just expressive, and so that's what the hard part is with bass, is that there's sometimes you'll find guys going like really improvising a lot on a track, and then the funny thing is the biggest worship songs are the ones that are super simple. So that's how it goes. You know the vibe.
Yeah. And hey man, I wondered, my mate Gary is on here and was asking about it's like South African gospel music, and maybe it'd be a good place to just go back into your ancient history and how you came into playing music and playing music in church and all that kind of stuff, because I know it's quite a juicy story.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. So my dad was in a big African rock group called Hawk, and that was during apartheid, and so there were African people in the band and white guys, and there was a lot of places in the country where they weren't actually allowed to perform on the same stage. So the drummers and some of the African guys had to be off stage, kind of, or behind the stage playing. It's crazy. And eventually they moved to the UK, because they grew really big in South Africa. This was before television, but they were one of the biggest kind of prog rock not Christian, but they were big prog rock African, like Africa meets Zeppelin kind of band, and they have a crazy following in Europe right now again, like an upsurgence of young people in Holland and places that are just way into that music again. So it's all about the story of Africa and the plundering of Africa and all this, the lyrics, all that kind of that content, and and apartheid stuff. And so they moved to the UK and signed to Polyphonic Records, which was the same record label that Peter Gabriel was on at the time. And then things fell apart for the band. Management was really weird, and they moved back to. I was a year old at the time, and I was in London with my mom, and my sister hadn't been born yet. And then we moved back to South Africa after the band fell apart. And then they were still kind of touring on and off. But my mom and dad was constantly getting separated because of my dad's lifestyle was just crazy. And so she would always try and make it work for the sake of the kids, because by that stage my sister was born, and my dad would always mess up, and she would just leave him and then come back to him and leave him. And eventually they were separated pretty much for good. And we'd live with my grandparents in Zimbabwe, which is a country just north of South Africa. And then eventually, my mom actually went to a little church, cottage church meeting, like a little life group meeting, if you want to call it that. And an old 80 Baptist lady from the States was there, missionary. Like, she was a Pentecostal, actually, I think. And she came out there as a missionary, and she was just sharing in this house meeting. And my mom, who'd been Catholic, kind of grew up nominal Catholic in her life and never really went to church much. She suddenly had this radical experience with God. This lady prayed for her, and she kind of fell down, and the whole deal. And she was just like a radical encounter with God. So she went and told my dad, it's over. I don't think we'll ever work this out, but I pray that you'll find peace, and that's that. So he heard about this, that she'd become a Christian. He'd always been the one that was into religion. So he had this thing called the Source that he used to plug into, and he'd a bit of weed and then do a headstand for half an hour and then plug into the Source and sit there and chant, and like that was his vibe. And she used to say, plugging into the tomato sauce, that's what he was doing, because she thought it was just so silly. And so he was like, well, I'm always the spiritual one. So anyway, he went and got drunk and then looked for her baptism. She was getting baptized one night, and so he thought, I'm going to go there and cause a scene with my buddy. So the two of them got like drunk, and then they started driving to try to find the church. Couldn't find the church. But they kept driving past it, so it's just interesting. And then eventually the service was over. She came out, and he found her, and she was standing there still wet from being baptized. And he could tell even in his state that something had changed. And he was like, something's happened here, and he doesn't know what it is. So she said, look, it's over. I'm happy. I'm fine without you. And he went back to the house they lived in as a band, and he started reading the book of John. And for the first time, he realized this was talking directly to him, and that this was him, that God was talking to, and that God so loved him. And so he kind of radical and kind of same thing. He just one day drugs and everything, and the next day no drugs, no drinking, everything just stopped right there. And within 2 months, they were back together again. So our family got back together. My dad went to Bible school at Rhema in Johannesburg, and then planted a church in Mitchell's Plain, which is a mixed race community in Cape Town. And this is all while apartheid's going. So
how old were you when that happened, when they got back together?
I was about 4 or 5 when my parents got back together. We ended up back. Oh yeah. I remember. Yeah. And then I remember us going down to Cape Town. I was about 10 when we moved to Cape Town, and went and to the classroom in a really poor neighborhood in Cape Town, on the Cape Flats, which is, there was an area that's for mixed race people, and they kind of, because segregation happened where they put everybody that was mixed in one area, everyone that was like true African in another area, and then everyone that was white lived in another area, and you couldn't kind of go into each other's areas. But we used to drive in there and go and do church. And it's funny because my dad produced a record for some guys that were mixed race in while he was producing records. He was kind of doing stuff in between, in those few years just after he became a Christian. And these guys were just such great dudes, and we had them stay in our house. We had to get police permission for them to sleep at our house while they were recording. And when he was with them, they were just so lapping up the stuff he'd been learning at Bible school. So he was so excited, and he said, if I ever plant a church, I want to be with these people. So we went and started a church, completely living by faith, no money, no income, crazy stories. Like, I remember a guy arriving, we never knew him at all. He called my dad and said, hey, can you meet me in my hotel room? And we're like, okay. So our whole family went up there, and he pulled out a briefcase of cash. It's like a crazy story, like mafia vibe. But he pulled it up and he said, I just want to bless you guys. I know that you're starting a church by yourselves. And he was just some business guy we never met. And it was like 7 months or 8 months of expenses that we needed to live and pay our house and all that kind of stuff. So that, like, I just saw stuff like that happened that was crazy. And then that church we grew up. So I grew up in a church that was really, I was really the only white kid, and my sister would in that family, in that church. And so we started, obviously the music at that stage was like Ron Canoli. That was the vibe, was like all fusion basically. And so I was the bass. I started playing bass at about 12 or 13. And so I had to learn all those songs that were like days and all that. And the guys always like, play the solo. So I had to be like, I had to play the whole bass solo. So I really learned how to play bass in church growing up. And I remember, from about 14 or 15, my dad he still used to sing and still made records. And we started touring as a family, and we'd go all over the world, and we played at Cross Rhythms Festival together, and we did a whole bunch of shows all over the place in the States and Sweden. And my dad would preach, and then we'd sing as a family, and it was the last thing I wanted to do was be on stage singing. I just did not dig it at all. I was
so like, you were a singing
like
group.
A family singing group. Yeah, we used to sing with backing tracks, like the four of us, my parents and myself and my sister.
Wow.
And eventually, like, my dad would let me play bass and tracks. So my dad would play acoustic guitar, I'd play bass, and we'd have a backing track, So we had like an interesting vibe going. But yeah, and so because I was more like, I'd rather play bass than just sing like with a mic and family song vibe. I just didn't like it. All I wanted to do is be a pro at that stage of my life. So I went to university for bass, and it was jazz, and it wasn't really my thing. So I wasn't like heavy into jazz. So it was like a really difficult course. And I at the end of the year, 70% of all of us dropped out, and so I was one of those. And we bailed, and I went to work in the States with an evangelist called Rodney Howard-Browne. I don't know if you know who that guy is.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. And so my sister and I worked in the States, and we went to Bible school here for a year, and then we went back to the UK to meet up with our family again. And we were doing a tour, I guess, a singing thing. And then my sister and I just started singing together and writing songs, and started playing more guitar and singing. And then we'd perform, and my dad would sing some songs, then the family would sing some songs, and then my sister and I would get up and sing a couple of our songs that we were writing. And then somewhere around that time, we got back to South Africa, and we were good buddies with Brenton Brown, who was a young guy that had written a whole bunch of kind of songs about the Lord, but also written some worship songs. And so there were a lot of his songs that didn't fit in for church worship. So we were like, can we record some of those songs? So we did our first record under a band name called Naked Lyric, and about that band. Prior to that, I was in another band with one of the guys from our church, actually, a mixed race dude that was also a scene, because it was still interesting traveling through South Africa at that stage with people if you were not all white guys, and then we started this other band, Naked Lyric, and did that for 6 years with my sister and a bunch of guys. We traveled all over the place and had a pretty good response on radio in South Africa. We had, I think, 2 top 20 songs on mainstream radio in South Africa. And then at the same time, this young band called Tree 63 from Durban had started playing, and we toured with them. Actually, we played some of the Gunston 500s, a big surfing competition in Durban, and we both played the same stage one night, and then met those guys, and then became friends. And then John came out here to the States with Sonic Flood and their first tour with Tree 63, and then he got back from that, and he was like, man, our bass player's leaving the band and our management's just left. I think I'm going to pack it up. And so I said, well, you've got these 2 big shows you're supposed to play in South Africa, and all your fans are crazy here and they love you, and you can't just do that. And I was like, well, I'll play bass for you for these 2 shows. So he's like, okay, let's do that. And as soon as we got together to rehearse, it felt like, man, this feels like something's really happening. And so that took me on a journey into that world. And we moved here in 2002 and just started touring the States and playing for like 9 or so years. We toured all over the world, really, in that band.
Amazing.
And then back to the South African music scene. There's a bunch of different bands and worship things that have come out of there that have been Christian bands. The one was called Friends First, which is one of the first bands that kind of was Malcolm Duplessis and Victor Masondo and JB Arthur and a bunch of really cool players that were in a band. That was like the only Christian band at the time. And my dad still had a big following as a singer. He did his own thing and played all the big shows, I guess, Christian things during that time early on. Now there's quite a few. I don't know if there's a bunch of different bands. I actually produced a couple of records for a guy called Heinz Winkler, who was the first South African Idol winner. So yeah, and he did a whole pop thing for years with like mainstream pop. And then recently he just did a worship record called The Raw. So he's always been a believer, but he never really did Christian music. And so he's just done a full worship record, and we're about to record another 4 or 5 songs for him. Yeah.
That's amazing. I remember like what was pretty awesome with the South African Christian scene, as in your 2 bands that we knew about, was that you weren't really seen as Christian bands. Like you had like a big following of just people, just dudes. And that was quite amazing, really, to see that, because you were good. Do you know what I mean? You were a good band.
Yeah.
And it was like the quality of the music was, you know, in the scene that you were in, you were really like shining out, as you had songs, you had, do you know what I mean? It was like, it was Tree were amazing. Tree was so good.
Yeah, it was an awesome band to be a part of. And let's not forget about Benjamin Gate. I mean, Benjamin Gate was an insanely good band. I mean, Adrian, the singer, she's just got one of my favorite voices ever. And the funny thing is, it's coming to the States afterwards and realizing that Christian music here has really painted itself into a corner as far as like created its own market and its own niche. America is very good at like honing in on marketing and making very pointy arrowed kind of like, this is who we are, this is what we do, and then there's their own thing, you know. Whereas in South Africa, we were just Christian people that loved music, so we made music. And because there was no Christian music scene, and there's also the Music Coalition thing where you had to play a certain amount of local content on radio. That's like the law, because they wanted local content on radio. So the big national radio station would play anybody that had really good sounding recordings with good, you know, and they knew that people were going to like it. So a lot of the music that got on radio, especially in those early days, on 5FM, which was a big national radio station, there was quite a few Christian bands that ended up getting, you know, top 20 songs. Or Tree had like a bunch of #1 singles. So then, because we're being played nationally, you go out and play a concert anywhere, and there's just thousands and thousands of people would show up to come watch the band because they're fans of the music, you know.
Amazing.
And it's funny here, it doesn't really happen. I mean, you had Switchfoot and some of those things where the labels would go, you know what, these songs could actually work here as well. So then they kind of cross over. And it's weird how the prophet wasn't, you know, the prophet's not welcome in his own town, because like Switchfoot had been touring in the Christian market for a long time and had not really any real breakthrough as far as like radio goes. Or POD is another one. Like they had no support from the Christian music at all, and then they became massive in the mainstream, and then they wanted to give them Dove Awards, and they were like, keep your Dove Awards.
Biting the head off a dog.
So it's just weird, because it was just we loved music, we loved playing it, and then there was, just because there was no real segregation of like, this is Christian and that's not, there was no genre segregation. So we just all ended up, if the songs were good and the music was good, it ended up on the radio. I loved that. I thought it was super cool.
Yeah, so cool. I mean, PID, I think they got to #1 here. Like, I'm sure. Which was wild, because
it's fully Christian.
Nobody's a Christian in England, hardly. Especially not then.
It just shows you that like the strength of the songwriting and the melody and the performance of the band is, and then the singer himself is like one of those one every 10 years, you know, once every 10 years there's a performer that gets up on stage and can actually command a place no matter how big it is, like that guy, you know. He's like Bono, you know, one of those people that just like they're super comfortable in a big setting like that, and you can tell they're born for it. Like you are. You're freaking awesome. I love watching you perform, watching you play.
That's cool. That's kind of you.
So tell us about your trip to South Africa. Yeah, you came and played with us. Eh? Was that our last show? Naked Lyrics last show? I think it was.
I think you might have. Did you reform for it or something?
I think it was our last show that we did as a touring band, and then later on, when I was back with Tree, we got together again and played a few shows. But it was our last kind of touring, I think, gig that we did, and at that, I think it was in Tableview or somewhere like that. It was so cool. I'm trying to remember, was the band Dust at the time, or what was?
Yeah,
what was the?
It was Dust. That was in. I think it was in 2000. No,
2000. Yeah, 2000 or 2001, somewhere around about there.
So it was just after 9/11.
So 2001.
Yeah, because we flew Turkish Airlines, like, and so we were like flying into a Muslim country, you know, like not like knowing anything, we're just kids. Do you know what I mean? Just going, why are we flying Turkish? We'll probably be all right. We'll probably be all right. We're having these conversations like, if something goes down on the plane, we need a plan. You know, we need to like. Do you know what I mean? Garrotting someone with a guitar string.
Yeah, you see sharpening his drumstick the whole way through the
flight. Pencil sharpener.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was pretty weird, and obviously security had all gone up in the airports and stuff. But South Africa was we have a mutual friend called Lizelle.
Yeah.
What was her South African band? Do you remember?
Rain. I actually used to play in that band as well. I played in that band for a little while. Yeah. A man of the night.
Yeah. And what was really strange was that they had this video. They did a video single kind of thing, and our former bass player was in her video. It's just so random. He was in South Africa doing his DTS with YWAM, and he kind of got out of a limo with sunglasses on or something like that.
Amazing.
It's very, very poor video.
Oh yeah, the music, a lot of the stuff
was
poor.
You directed it, right? It's probably you that directed it.
Nothing to do with that.
So she basically, I was trying to remember, I think she may have just paid for us to go out there.
Wow.
I think she did something crazy like that. Like, I've got to get you guys out to South Africa. It's going to be epic, or, you know, brew. And I think I can't remember. I'll have to fact check that. So we did a few gigs, and the craziest, well, we went up to this vineyard conference called New Song.
Yes, that was up in
Mossel Bay.
Yeah, Mossel Bay, yeah.
That's where we found out what unprotected waters meant.
Shark infested.
After going for a swim, wondering why no one else was swimming in the sea, and these three English idiots are like splashing around, having a great time, you know. And people are looking at us like, probably thinking, these guys are hardcore. You know? They don't care, man.
Men of faith.
And we got back to the little hut, and we were reading the information, you know, for like the conference. And we got to this section just after we got back from this swim. Got to the section, do not swim in the sea. Do not go in past your ankles, basically, because there's a huge seal colony, and you're gonna die. So yeah, that was crazy. South Africa's quite a dangerous place, isn't it? It's like
it really is. It's volatile. It's beautiful. It's wild. It's really, really cool. But it's a lot. Everything is on steroids, you know. Like people always say, "What is it? How can you compare Cape Town to somewhere else?" And I go, "It's like California on steroids. The seas, the mountains are bigger, you know. The beaches are wider. The ocean is colder. The sharks are massive. It's you know, and then like as far as the cultural intercultural stuff, you know, you could live in Tennessee here, and I was just telling people, you know, if I have a neighbor that's a black guy, if I called him on the phone, he'd sound like a normal white guy. You know, I wouldn't really be able to tell the difference between him and another guy. Economically, everyone's in the same boat to some degree. Everybody's kind of same education, same sports. Everything's kind of very similar in a lot of ways. Whereas in South Africa, when you walk out of the door, you're walking into a bunch of different socioeconomic differences, there's cultural differences, there's language differences, and so you're forced to be in a world that's like a lot more on guard, because there's a lot of opportunistic crime, not because of anything other than there's people that are so poor that they're looking for any opportunity to try and make a way for themselves. So if you leave your camera sitting down for 1 second and turn away, it's going to be gone, and it's your own fault. So there's a lot more awareness, but in some ways that makes you feel more. It's an interesting thing. I told a friend of mine when I was back there, I said I was trying to work out why I feel so alive, and it's because I feel like there's a chance I could die at any time. You know? So it's interesting. It's really cool.
Yeah, it's a really cool place. It's so we grew up obviously. I mean, you spent some time in England, but I grew up, I think, in a very unracist family. So like always, I don't know, like my dad for some reason, he loves black people. It's like he just got this love, you know, like we had Bob Marley records at home and all that kind of stuff, and we loved the music, and so I sort of grew up with this. It's almost like a real love for
the
other
culture and the people,
and
exactly
what you're not like, but you know, just wanting to connect and stuff,
like a crush on it almost.
Like a crush, yeah.
That's awesome.
So it was really weird. I had a weird experience in a new song because, like you say, you were just not long out of apartheid, really. And it was all those boundaries all sort of getting rejigged and redefined. And I remember I had the most mad experience. I had a couple of mad experiences at New Song. Nearly eaten by a shark. That was quite mad.
Yeah.
There was a demoniac attack thing that happened.
That. Yeah. Jumping all over my friend's car.
Which was hectic, brew. It was hectically hectic, brew. Yeah, and the other one was I was in the bath in the morning, and I had this worship song come in my head, which is this song. It's called "Moving with the Lamb," and it's a really beautiful song from the South African Vineyard album.
Oh wow!
The Winds of Worship type thing. I had a picture of a giraffe on the front. You know,
That's amazing. The neck of worship. I'm closer to you, Lord. I'm closer than other people.
Anyways, I had this song in my head, and then I went down and saw this like big queue of black guys, and they were like queuing up for food. It was like a big queue of people, and I think they had like an egg each and a bit of bread. And I was just like, I didn't know what was going on. I was like, who are these guys? And so me being me, I thought, I'm just going to go and like hang out with them, sort of thing. So I went over, and they were playing football, right? But they were playing in a circle, and I was like, hey, can I play? Can I play with you guys? And they were like, yeah, you can play if you go in the middle. So I had to go in the middle of the circle and try and get the ball. And mate, I was there so long trying to get this ball, and I couldn't get it. And I was just like, eventually I got it, and then I was really knackered, and I went and sat down with these, but it sort of broke the ice. You know, they had a good laugh at me and stuff. And I went and sat down, and I was like, so where are you guys from? And they're like, we're from Soweto. I think but I think they said Soweto.
Okay, maybe, yeah.
Yeah, Soweto. I don't know. It was just I don't know, mate. And they were like, "Yeah, we're from a vineyard church in Soweto," and I was like, "No way! I'm from a vineyard church." You know, it's like this little chat, and I said, "Hey, do you know this song, Moving with the Lamb?" And no word of a lie, okay, the guy next to me, I was chatting to this young guy, and he said, "Oh yeah," he said, "that guy over there wrote it." And I was like, "For real? Like really?" So he introduced me to this guy called Sibu, or Sibu Suize.
Yeah,
And it was
yeah.
the dude. It was the dude who'd written the song. And that was how I met him. So it was really strange because we were at a Christian festival, mainly white people there. And then you had the guys from, it was a vineyard festival. So you had the guys from the township, but they were all still like, you know, obviously they were all mates amongst themselves kind of thing. And there wasn't much cross pollination, you know, there wasn't much going on. And for me, that was really weird.
Yeah.
Really weird. It just and seemed wrong.
Yeah.
But at the same time, and it is, but at the same time, it was like, hang on a minute, because all these white guys here, they're really good guys who love Jesus, and you know, it's like, but it's people. It was just people stuck in those different camps
and
worldviews, and like
I remember
the guy eating an egg and a bit of bread, and then the guy over here, you know, he's able to go to the fast food, have a, you know, he's got a wallet full of money, and
100%.
it's just weird, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really interesting. Two thoughts that come to mind about that is there's obviously there were like 40 or 60 years of people that had never really lived around each other. So you might have found like there was probably not the animosity maybe that you would have expected if they had connected with us, but it was just not normal yet to really integrate. Like I went to school without any black people in my school, so I had no black kids in my school. And if it hadn't been for my dad, who was constantly connecting us with, cross cultural stuff and being involved in ministry with other people, I honestly would never have really been around. Like most of my friends in Fisher, where we kind of lived, it's a little valley, around the edge of a mountain. There was no one in those places unless there was someone that worked in your yard or someone that worked in your house that went home again afterwards, and that was your kind of maid or your gardener. There was no interaction with African people, and it's interesting because there wasn't hatred. In fact, in America, I found much more racism of the heart when I got here to Tampa than I did in South Africa, because although they were poor, they were still working in your yard, and you were still paying them a salary, which was fair at the time. There was not like this weird hatred for each other. You didn't sit down and have dinner together, but there was not but as far as in the States, when I got here, especially from the African American side, there was a lot of real whoa, these guys really don't like me, and they don't like white people generally. Like if you get to it, they really just don't like white people, and then you really get into it in the South. Living in Nashville, I've been here for 20 years. If you really dig deep, a lot of these people don't really like black people too. Like they're like my daughter asked me yesterday. She said to me, "How would you feel if I brought a black guy home?" And I was like, "Mom and I was like, yeah, that'd be great as long as he's a good kid and he's not, as long as he's a good guy and he's not just trying to have a white girlfriend to have a white girlfriend. If he likes you and if he's a good dude, we're into it, And she's like, "You're the only dad, and out of all my friendship circle of girls that feels that way. All the dads are like, if you bring a black guy home, don't ever do that." And like, I'm like, this is 2020 in America, and there's guys are saying they don't want their daughters to bring home a black guy, and that's like, wow, that's just mind blowing to me.
Yeah,
whereas in South Africa, there was the bulk of the people really just wanted to get on with our lives together, and there was no like, oh, I don't like you, I don't, there obviously was some sense of a lot of people would feel that they were maybe more important than black people because they made more money or whatever it was. But that's the same in any culture. You might find in London, there's people that feel like we are elite
Mm-hmm.
and you guys are nothing because we, you know, it's just that
Yeah.
there's no color wrapped into it, but it's
Completely
you know,
normal.
yeah, it's interesting, man. It's interesting.
It is interesting, and you've got quite a unique sort of perspective, having lived in different places.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
it's wild.
it's I love I love that thing about being one in Christ, and how there's no longer male and female, there's no longer Jew and Gentile,
Yeah,
no longer slave or free,
yeah,
but we're all in the body, and we're all one
yeah,
thing. We're all in Christ, like welcomed
yeah.
in.
It's awesome.
And I love that, and I love the power of the gospel. The power of the good news of Jesus to absolutely just smash all that rubbish. Once you receive the Holy Spirit, and with the help of outside, we're all blind to our own culture generally,
Yeah,
and you need that. That's what's great about just connecting with people from other places, other nations, is that you start to see things from a different point of view. One of
absolutely.
the amazing things, this guy Cebu, he became mates with Brenton,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm pretty sure he's living in Northern Ireland now,
No way.
and he married the daughter of a guy called Mike Mahoney. I don't know if you know him. He was one of the guys who sort of went into the townships with his two little daughters.
Yeah,
Just walked in, heard about this prayer meeting going on in Soweto,
yeah,
and it's a powerful thing. But yeah, he with Brenton, actually, we went over to Serbia, no, Kosovo. We went to Kosovo
wow.
and did this worship and reconciliation conference. So they brought people from Ireland, North Catholics and Protestants, and they brought white and black South Africans. And mate, it was so powerful. I was absolutely traumatized for about 2 weeks afterwards. But I couldn't cope with it. But Cebu got up and said like how they used to watch the A Team,
Yeah,
and they all used to gather around this one TV when the A Team was on, because they actually got to see BA, Mr. T,
yeah.
throwing his clothes around, like chucking it, like they'd all be cheering, like because it's just something they'd never
Thought
like.
possible.
It would never be possible, you know what I mean? And he said that they were taught. This is heartbreaking, but they were taught, if you see a white guy, run, because it was a time when the police would come in and just,
Yeah,
just take people out and stuff like that. Just if you were out in the wrong place or seen, there was just no mercy. So they grew up with that fear,
yeah,
So it was an amazing healing thing. Just like I said, I just thought this Cebu was just awesome. Do you know what I mean? Great guy and so talented, can play any instrument, right or left-handed, just do anything. So it's like give him a hug, like. So yeah, it's cool,
that's
man.
wild. Yeah, I mean, the funny thing about apartheid was that even though I was in a family that was very integrated with a lot of different cultural situations, I never realized how radical some of the stuff was until I've read a lot of stuff after leaving South Africa. It's weird because
Yeah.
it keeps me in touch with my roots. I go and buy, like when I go home to South Africa, I go scour the bookshops and I find all these old books on apartheid, and I find books that are new books on apartheid, and you read like so much stuff that I never realized was going on. at the time, and some of the stuff was just radical. Like you couldn't get an education past a certain level as a black person because they didn't want you to get too clever in case you decided you wanted to take over the country. Like some crazy stuff that was we never knew about really. And some of that stuff was going on in government and behind closed doors, and and one of the weird things that I remember my dad was when I started becoming awoken to the idea of what was going on. I think I was about 18 or so, 17. I said to my dad, "This is wrong." I said, because my drummer in that band, Free, that I told you about, my sister Bashara on her Facebook page just put up some photos actually of that band yesterday, and he's this African guy in this band with us, and we used to go drive past our beach, and I'd say we should go to the beach, and he goes, "No, you can't with me. I'm not allowed to go to that." And I was like, "What? Oh yeah, that's right. So you can't go to this beach with all the slipping slides and all the cool stuff." And he's like, "No, our beach is over there and there's nothing on it." And I was like, and he always told me about how I used to drive past that beach, and when we were little kids, he'd say, "Daddy, can we go there?" And his dad would say, "No, we're not allowed to go there." And I'm like broken. And I said to my dad, "This is wrong." I said, "Dad, why don't you get up on stage and start preaching against apartheid?" And I said, "You can make a change." And this is what he said. It is so powerful. He said to me, "If you have an agenda, all that would happen if I got up and started preaching about how wrong apartheid was, is in the natural and in the flesh, I'd get people really angry about the situation, and then they would take that and try and do something in their natural flesh and in their anger." He said to me, "We've moved into this neighborhood, and we live with these people, and we show them that we are all the same in God's eyes." Like you were talking about, there's neither
Yes.
slave nor free, and we showed them all this. He said, "I'm living a life where we teach them about who they are in Christ." He said, "The only way apartheid can really change is if the hearts of the people are turned to Jesus. That's it. There's no other way." And I was like, he says, "If you preach Christ, then apartheid will change." And I was like, you can't preach against apartheid. You preach against sin, and you preach against, and you don't even have to preach against the sin of hatred for other people. All you have to do is preach Christ and Him crucified, and people's hearts will change to where they'll actually, it automatically is it's a byproduct, is this desire to see each other as equal, and this desire to say, "I'm," because you die to self and you say, "This is." So it was powerful because I realized, man, you want to say like you should be getting on your high horse, or you should be doing more about apartheid. And my dad says, "No." He says, "You preach Jesus and that's it." That's really cool.
Yeah, it is really cool. There's a Larry Norman lyric where he sort of goes through all this crazy stuff in America. I think he says, you put a man on the moon, or you beat the Russians to the moon or something, but you starved your children to do it. And he like really criticizes a lot of stuff that was going on at the time,
Yeah.
And then he says, "Don't ask me for the answers. I've only got one, that a man leaves his darkness when he follows the sun." That's how he finishes the song. And it's just like, yeah, that's it, isn't it? We can help people on that journey, can't we? With maybe bringing it back to music a little. That's what's so beautiful about music, isn't it? Is that you can speak unspoken stuff or unspeakable things that connect past culture. You can be moved in your heart, and it's sort of like it's bypassing your objections and sneaking. It's sneaky.
It's amazing. Other thing, James, I was just saying is that Mark has to call you James. Mark.
Right, that happens every time.
I was going to say the other thing is, I've got this. I'm sitting working here in the studio every day by myself and I'm a people's person, so I find it quite hard not to just have people around. And so I go on every now and again on socials, and I'm checking what's going on. And whenever I see your music feed come up, and I see a lot of people's music feeds come up, including a lot of the people that I really am a fan of, other music people that are not in the mainstream guys, like great songwriters like Sean Colvin or David Wilcox and all these other guys are all live as well. But when I see your news feed come up, it's like I just know that when I click on that, that it's really gonna feed my soul and my heart, and it's not only the lyrics that are reaching me. It's even the tone of your heart that comes out. If you never had to sing a word, it's like I just feel that it's so much bigger than just the lyrics of the song and even the melody of the song or even your performance or the voice. It's who you are that permeates through the vibe, and it just really is awesome it just immediately gets me, and it's just really I just wanted to encourage you that it's really great, bro. And there's not many people that can that have that coming through, and I don't know what it is that you do in your quiet time, but
well, that is my quiet time. That is my quiet time.
And also the fact that I know you're 100% real about everything and what your motivations and everything behind it feels just so pure. It's just really, really cool, man. Really cool.
Oh, thanks, man. That's awesome. That's so nice.
Yeah.
I mean, it's probably one of the things that I've loved about you as well is the times that we've connected, maybe after gigs or whatever it is. I mean, I don't think anyone can make me laugh quite like you have, and just also has you're always there if you want to get real and actually talk about things, serious things. And I feel you're similar to, maybe it's a bass player thing, but you're similar to Henry, our bass player, in that way.
Yeah.
It's like, if you want to get real, and also if you want to know me, you can know me, kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? Which I really appreciate. I don't like feeling like I'm wasting somebody's time. You know, like if they're quite well known or famous. I struggle with that sort of thing, that dynamic of like, yeah, people are people, aren't they? And yeah, man.
Thank you, bro. That's awesome.
It's a bass player thing, definitely.
I see Paul McNeely on here, and he's talking about the trip we did out to Ireland, and we went to the Ballymena football match. I totally remember that, Paul. So much fun, man. We had such a great time. Yeah, I love Ireland. I love the trips we've done out there. And we've been to Scotland, and we've been to a bunch of different places that with Brent, and it's been really, really cool.
It's kind of the Shire, isn't it? It's
What's that?
It's the Shire, you know, it's the hobbits. Like we just read, me and Lemmy just been reading just last pages now, Lord of the Rings, but it's like it's basically the hobbits are English people, or you know, it's definitely, it's all based around here. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of through the war and the kind of the valiant, you know, the finding of your sort of courage and all that kind of stuff.
So awesome.
Which is like, you see with this stuff going on with the COVID thing, you see glimpses of this, what's in us, you know, like the Brits. And we just had this 75 years since VE Day. And it was like people started putting Union Jacks out, and there's kids like chalking the street, and there's no cars around. And it's like, it's like we went back in time a bit. It was really weird feeling of like, I love this place. I love these people. Like at our best, you know, at our best, there's something really, really awesome.
Yeah,
I think about every culture, you know, that you can love, and yeah.
Yeah, I feel that way. I feel like when you become friends with a Brit, it's for life, you know, and it's really cool. I've got a buddy in Cornwall who moved out here, and he was really difficult to get to know initially, and didn't really want anything to do with me because I was staying with his parents because they put us up as a family because we were singing at some event, and he'd kind of fallen out with God and the church, and I hung out with him, and because I was a surfer and a bass player, and he also surfed. You're just learning to surf, so he said, "I'll take you surfing, but don't talk to me about God." So I said to him, "Well, bro," I said, you got a choice. You can either talk to me about it now, or you can talk to me about it later when your life's falling apart." So he said, "What?" I said, "Yeah." I said, you got two choices. You'll either be like, because he thought his life was great at that point, and he didn't need God. And I was like, well, if you ever get to the dregs when you're down at the bottom, feel free to call me. I said, I'm happy to hang with you, and you can come stay with me in South Africa if you need to. Cut to like 6 months later, his whole life had fallen to shreds, and he flew out to South Africa and moved in with me and lived in my house for 6 months. And he's one of my best mates in life. And his daughter Izzy, she's got a fantastic voice. She ended up on the BBC. I produced like 3 songs with her, just with a cello and a piano, and she just ended up in Glastonbury Festival, and I think it was Glastonbury. She sang in some big festival and went on radio, and it's just crazy. But his whole story is crazy too. I mean, yeah, you might have even met him. I think you may have met him. We did that Willicum event down with 363 down on the coast.
Yeah.
Did you do that at all or no?
We did. We were pretty early in the evening, I think, or in the afternoon, whenever we did that.
But yeah,
I don't remember him, but
yeah, he's a good kid. But anyway, he got radically fired up. Then he went back home, got married, and then he had a little girl, and she got leukemia. So then he had a radical fallout again with God. And I came to visit him at the Willicum event, and he said, "Hey Dan, don't talk to me about God." So I was like, "Okay, you can either talk to me now or you can talk to me later." And then the funny thing is, she survived, and they went through the treatments for 2 years. And then I remember when she was like 9 years old or 10 years old, we came back to an event again in somewhere in Dartmouth or somewhere. I don't remember where it was. And they ended up, she was standing at the front singing Everlasting God with Brenton and us. And I looked at her and I realized this is the same kid that he was like, I don't want to know about God. And he was at the back and he clicked at the same time. He's like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
It's just pretty wild. It's a wild story, but it's amazing how things come around.
It is amazing. It's amazing. It's funny, like those little connections, but also some of those kind of, yeah. I mean, I can remember you calling me concerned about another friend of yours, and I just think,
was it my mom?
It wasn't your mom, no. Yeah, just like an old bandmate of yours that you were a bit worried about.
Okay. Yes. I remember that.
It's just like that is, you're looking out for people, and yeah, just with a heart for those guys on the edges, and that's always. I mean, this thing that sort of God is looking, isn't he? He's not unaware of anybody, and he really, like, I don't know. I think you have the church thing, and that's one thing, and I don't know about you, but I go to church, and I love the church, and I value the church, and then you get this sort of, there's a big disconnect sometimes between what God is doing and where God is moving and where the church is at sometimes, and it's not always the same thing. I think sometimes Christians think, okay, well, God is in the church, but actually the yeast of the kingdom is sort of all over. Yeah, and it's
that's funny. I had sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Carry on.
Cool. Probably what you're saying is probably going to be better than what I'm saying.
No, I had this conversation the other day. I was on another chat with another mate online, and we were just discussing this thing, and it's crazy how I came up with this analogy how churches, a lot of churches, especially corporate church in America, is set up like the way they set it up. It's set up like a corporation. There's the CEO who's the big shot pastor earning all the money, and then down the ranks you get the people earning less and less and less, and then you get your volunteers, and then you've got this church structure which is set up. and it's kind of like that. A lot of those churches are built on a corporate model, which is like trying to reach the families that are very kind of middle of the road. And so then it's like having a family dinner with all of your family coming around, and then you invite your boss and his wife and their family over, and then you've got your one son is actually like a gothic kid with like nose rings and everything. You really don't want him to come into the living room, because then you have to say, "Oh, this is my son." And so that's what the music people and the creatives in the church are like. It's like you really don't want them in church, because you really don't want it to be like, oh gosh, there's a weird black sheep of the family kid. He might be good at Minecraft, but really he's not. We're not super happy about it. And so there's this disconnect with like people feeling like he might dirty the carpets in the church with his muddy feet or whatever. And I think it's like it's a very sad thing, because it cuts the hands off the body a lot of the time, because often the creatives are those people that can actually reach into have the reach into the culture to actually pull more people into the church. But it's like the church decides to cut off their hands in case they get dirty. I don't know how to explain it, but it's just an interesting conversation, that whole thing about why do so many people that are creative people get burned out, and they say, I don't go to church anymore. It's that thing. I think it's like, don't come and mess with the perfect photograph of our family with our nice little clothes on. I don't know, I might be wrong.
That's a good parable, man. I was really it's a good, isn't it? I was really fortunate. So in our little vineyard church with Chris Lane, who his son is Sam Lane, and you probably know Jesse. Do you know Jesse and Darren Clark? They're over your way.
Names up. If I saw them, I'd go, "Oh, dudes!"
Yeah. So those guys wrote a song, "I Love Your Presence."
I love your presence. That one.
Yeah, and Sam awesome. Rain. I think Sam wrote something with Brenton recently. But he's an awesome little lion of a dude. Awesome. But we just turned up looking like we look, and was amazing to be welcomed into that church, and in a church where we were. They paid us. They supported Dust for a couple of years, like gave us a certain expenses money every month. So when we were traveling, doing stuff like that in South Africa, we were sort of, I think we got, I don't know how much it was, a couple £100 a month back then.
Yeah.
As a van, put petrol in the van, and because we weren't into anything like making money.
Yeah.
Or I remember being like chatting to a guy from a Christian label, and he came up and said, "Oh, I'm from, I don't know what it was, Alliance or something like that." And I was just like, "No, we're not interested in any. We're not interested in anything to do with that at all. Sorry, just like burn him." And the guy's, "Okay, fine," And then it's like a few years later, you're like, could have had a record deal. Could have, but it was cool, man. And it was that sort of radical. I remember Paul Burton saying to us, like, you guys don't really need a record deal, because you're just about going to these places and reaching people. So yeah, we did get a record deal eventually. Maybe we made our own.
Yeah,
do you have to go? Because it's we've done an hour.
I'm easy, man. If you're having fun chatting, I don't mind chatting a bit more. I'm easy.
I think Henry might come on and say hello.
Oh, cool. Yeah, bring him in.
Oh, Jimmy.
I see Bob Stratton out there.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Bubbly Bob. Yeah, so if Jimmy or Henry appears, we'll let him in.
Okay, cool.
For a few more. Cool. So what are you dreaming about? That might be a bit of a strange one in this lockdown sort of period. But let's add more.
So so my sound. Hey, look at that. Hey. I feel very underbearded.
Yeah, you look weak, man.
Good to see you, man.
I might be suffering with internet craziness again.
You look awesome. Look at that vibe. Definitely the best looking out of all of us.
That's what he said. He's going on about the other day. I just get more and more good looking as I age.
Me too.
Yeah.
Mate, there is a peak.
Moment. I can't do this right, but can you see the mullet? Check this.
No.
Yeah.
Beautiful
Not
thing.
quite.
Still thing going in the side.
Strong work.
It's a good chat, man. I was just listening to your chat there. That's it, man. I remember coming to St Albans and like the Vineyard Church that Mark was just talking about, and my first 2 weeks I didn't step inside the church. I was just smoking outside with my friends, and so I was at college, and I'd sort of grown up Christian, and then I didn't want anything to do with it. As soon as I left school, I was going to college. I was like, right, girls, drink, drugs, here we go. It's going to be party.
The way forward.
And it turns out all the guys that I was smoking weed with in college went to St Albans Vineyard. So they were like, hey, do you want to come to church? I was like, okay. And so I ended up going to church with these guys and hanging outside the front. And exactly the same as Mark's, being like so welcomed, you know. And that is not a common thing at all. I know Chris has taken a lot of hits to be so welcoming to people that have messed him up, you know.
Yeah.
I think, where is he? Where is the dog?
Jimmy.
I'm here. Hang on one sec.
He's mysterious. Oh,
hey,
dude.
Hey.
You clean cut looking, bro. You're more clean.
Oh, man. Danny Nashville, how are you, brother?
Danny Nashville.
Where have you been all my life?
Oh, it's so good. This is amazing. We should start another band.
Yeah, man.
Bottom, 2 bass players.
Left and right.
Jim, just turned your computer on quickly to look professional.
Yes, Henry. Yes. That's exactly what happened.
Yes.
How is everyone? Have you been going for 1 hour 7? Wow. Okay. I need to catch up.
Yeah. It was.
Are you coming in? Are you coming into land? Is this the twilight hour of the show?
We are now.
Peak.
Great.
It's been great. All right. See you later.
Yeah. Sayonara, suckers.
I can remove you from the room, Jimmy, if you're not.
Yeah. if I misbehave.
I was asking. We've had a great chat, actually. We've been into all kinds of things, but I was just asking him about his dreams for the future.
Oh yeah. All right.
Isn't it in lockdown, because we don't know what the heck's going on, or if there is a future.
Right.
Is there a future?
This is the There
is no future.
Yeah, it's an interesting time. Yeah, interesting time, man. Yeah, so I've been trying to build my wife's business out. Actually, she's an artist, she's a painter, and she's been doing these art parties where people get together and paint. And so I've always had this idea of creating these online box sets where people get the painting, and then they get they go online and they watch the video and they can paint at home like she does here at the parties. And so basically, I've always thought, I'll do that one day. And now that there's literally nothing going on, I've tackled that, and we're about to launch that thing. So I'm stoked to see some of her stuff really get a chance to breathe and get out there. And in the meantime, I'm writing songs. Yeah, thanks, man. Yeah. So it's a funny thing. Whenever someone says to me, wow, that painting's amazing, I say thank you, which is weird because I had nothing to do with it. And then I realized afterwards, why are you saying thank you? I'm like, I suppose
it's
you
5,000. Would you like to buy it?
Exactly.
I
love it so much.
Yeah, if you love it so much, where's your pocketbook?
That's right. I just downloaded it off Facebook for free, so it's fine.
Yeah.
You should see the giant print we have in our lounge. Yeah. What about you guys?
Who wants to go? Well, Henry's pastoring a church, aren't you, mate?
Yeah, who's a good idea with that?
That's amazing.
Yeah, no, it's awesome, man. It's really cool.
They all smoke weed and like.
Yeah, yeah. We're so culturally relevant. It's amazing. Like bottles of whiskey at the back and stuff.
Yeah, and spiritually irrelevant and culturally relevant.
Yeah, that was what they told me in church school, right? To be spiritually irrelevant. So, yeah, I love. I'm really pleased to jump in because of what you were talking about church, and Dan, what you were talking about, how like the creative people get kicked out. Basically, I was like, that's my passion for. I say to our people all the time, I'm like, to be expectant that there are going to be people here that you don't want to be here, right? That has to be church, because if it's not, then I don't want to be a part of it. I want people who disagree with me, maybe disagree with what I preach, but they just keep coming back because of the love and the family, right? And and it's kind of like that's the worst thing as a pastor to set your mind to, because it's flipping pastorally really hard work,
Yeah.
Now, by and large, we're all right because people haven't really got the message yet. So there's not too many weird. But still, it's like I remember Mike Pilavachi talking about something. He was like talking about family, and he was like, "Church is family, right?" And you were saying how so many American churches sort of built on that sort of corporate model, and he's like, "You don't fire family when family screws up, You work with your family, right?" And that's not to say obviously there isn't a time and a place where stuff has to end, but that's not the go-to, right? You're not like, right, I need to fire you and get someone better to do what you're doing not very well. You're just saying, how have we got it so wrong? We're just sort of chasing this actual thing that we think we want, but actually if you look at it, it's kind of sick. And it's like, I don't want my church to look like that. If that's what church is, that's pretty lame. Like if it's all about numbers and lights and smooth transitions, if that's really got to say, then I don't really want any part of that. Actually, what about church where people actually give a rip about each other? People actually put their hand in their pocket to help each other out. People are supporting one another, encouraging people to create, funding people to create. That's something I'm excited about. So I think that's probably where I'm at, sort of dreams wise, on the back of what you were saying. It's exciting, man.
Yeah. It's amazing, man. It's really, really cool.
Do you think there's like, so for me, I fitted in really well at the Vineyard because of my giftings. So because I could play guitar, so straight away I found a place there, with Graham and those guys, and we really like flourished as musicians in that environment. But for others who are not necessarily church worship material or whatever, it's like, it seems to me like the bigger a church gets, the less space there is for others. So like if you think, okay, you have one guy leading worship for 20 people, and then you have one guy leading worship for 20,000 people. Well, what are all those, say there's 1 in 100 of us are worship leaders. What are all those other worship leaders doing there? Just like, so we were chatting a bit about this yesterday, like that I would like to encourage people to find their space in society and to have a different understanding of leadership. But church leadership is there to release people into what God's called them to, whether that be anything in society, any job, whatever it is, your family and whatever He's called you to. Rather than it being just this narrow, like, okay, if you're called by God, you're into the ministry, you're into, I am, and Henry is, we have a call into that. but not everybody does, and but your gifts have to be welcomed in the church, you have to be welcomed, and then sort of the leadership of the church is there to equip God's people for works of service, isn't it? It's not to be there entertaining them or gathering them, or it's something more than that. It's something more powerful than that.
Yeah, funny thing is, I've seen this thing happen quite a bit in the States. I have this question often with worship artistry when we do conferences. People ask me this question. They'll go, what do you do when you've outgrown your singer that started with this church? And I'm like, what? And they're like, yeah, we had this girl that was singing background vocals, and she was fine while we were a small church. But now that the church has grown and we've got a better PA system and more lights, and we're getting to that level where we don't really want, we need to upgrade, because there's other singers now that are better. I'm like, what? It makes no sense in my mind. And I'm like, they want to put her out to pasture and then crush her life for the sake of the building of their bigger, better. Then you were, and also guys will say, our worship leader is fine for a small church, but when we get more money, we're going to hire someone that's better. And I'm like,
right, yeah.
It's just weird. It's
weird. Such a shame, isn't it? It's kind of like it's sort of a transactional business thing, isn't it? Treating people as a commodity to build your brand or something. It's super messed up, actually, isn't it?
It's so weird, man. See, Henry's very confused about it. There, he's gone. He was just.
he was like, I'm out.
Phone call. You're back on the team.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't mean any of it. You're a great singer.
It's tricky as well because you're balancing that thing of like people's security and identity being in what they do, not who they are in Christ. And that's for all of us. It's like the amount of things I've been through as far as, maybe getting dropped by a label or this and that, or, you got your, can you come and play guitar for us for a 15-year-old worship leader, or whatever it is. It's like these little things that could, or they didn't pick me this time. I could have done that,
Yeah.
All those sort of things we all have, and I think I'm a youth pastor. I'm also worship pastor. So part of my role is to work alongside people with some of that stuff. So when those insecurities comes up, or those conflict comes up, it's like, okay, well, what's the freedom here for you? Rather than it being, because you've got to have gifting, right? You've got to have some kind of gifting. Mm-hmm. I think it's like, I'm not going to put myself up as the finance guy for the church. Well, I have no desire to do that anyway, but, there may be things that I have a desire to do, but not necessarily the gifting to do them.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes, the worship thing is a specific kind of thing, because it's not just about music. It's something, you get these people who are amazing musicians and performers. Mm-hmm. They don't really have that thing of leading God's people in worship. Do you know what I mean?
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I remember when I got to that point when I was talking earlier in our story about how I wanted to be a pro surfer, and I was never super sporty at growing up, but and I remember when I was about 16, I got in my head that I want to become a pro surfer, and I told my dad, and he said to me, we went on our family vacation to this little place we were all hanging out. We'd been hanging out for a few days, and when I told him this, the way he shared with me that I don't think that's for you, because of the relationship that we had and the way that I knew that he had my best interest at heart above his own, or above, it wasn't like he was thinking what's best for me. He was thinking what's best for you, Dan. And I knew that. So when he said this to me, he said, I think you've got other gifts that are more than that, and I think you should. It was a very immediate thing for me to go, okay, cool. And it was, although it was my dream at that time, it was very easy for me to go, no, that's not what's for me. And I feel like that, that navigating that thing where you've got people in the worship team that maybe really can't sing, and they've always been there banging the tambourine in the front when there were 5 of you in a lounge, in a living room. That's get in order for you to tell Susie, hey, Susie, we really can't have you singing over the PA system now that we have a clear sound. The reality is, I think, is Susie knows 100% for sure that you've got her best interest at heart. And it's not just about your church that you're trying to make look cool. Then I think that there's room for all that stuff to happen within a family, to where you can help people find what they're better at and find their strengths but it takes the work of having true relationships with each other, where you can actually say, Dan's got my best interest at heart. He's not thinking how he can feather his own nest or build a bigger church, and I think that's the work that it takes, really, if you want to have a healthy church or a healthy family.
That's good. Yeah, it's really good.
I
so
love.
What do you say?
Go on, Jimmy.
Sorry, what do you say to the people that you meet who ask you about the backing singer upgrade, or how do you respond?
How do I respond?
Yeah,
I turn up the television.
That's great.
It's often that similar type of conversation that we were having now, and a lot of people say to me, we do these conferences especially with Brent and North Paul, we'll do these, these how to arrange music as a band or whatever workshop at like some Christian musician summit or whatever it is. And there's a couple of thousand people there, and they ask questions at the end, and they always say, how do I get my drummer to play softer?
Yeah.
And I say to them, the best way to get your drummer, and they're expecting me to say, you find brushes, or there's these little, root sticks that you can use that'll play, or a drum shield, and there's all these things they're expecting me to say. And I say, well, you take him out to lunch. and they go, what do you mean? And I say, well, have you? Because if he doesn't believe that when you tell him to play softer, that it's for his benefit as well, and that it's for the benefit of everybody, and it's like not that you're trying to say, I don't want to hear you, you're being too loud, or it's like he's not a pawn on your chess game. He's actually a guy that you really have a relationship with, and if he knows, or like guys that play too busy, or it's if you don't trust the person that's telling you something about your playing, then you're not going to receive it. You're not going to, you're going, are you trying to ruin my fun? Or like if you've got a metal drummer that plays metal, and then he comes to church and he wants to play because that's the only chance he gets to be in front of people, and he carries on playing metal. The only way to get him to change his vibe is going to be, is going to have a relationship with him to where you can actually say something and he's not going to get offended by it. And the only way to not be offended is if you have a true relationship, man. So
that's great. That's really good. Yeah.
I was able to say, in fact, just today I sent a text message to one of our worship leaders, she's super, super gifted, amazing singer. But I said to her, I would like, it's kind of a weird thing, I've not really ever done this before, but I said, I want 10% more preparation this week. Can you give me that?
10% more preparation.
10% more. Which is just such a weird thing to say, and it's very unlike me. But straight away, she was like, yeah. And it's like, it's what you're talking about. She knows. Do you know what I mean? That I'm only saying that because I think there's more, Like,
yeah. You believe in her, right?
Yeah, totally. She's rocking. And but right, like you imagine you're on your first day. Okay, I want 10% more.
Yeah.
And it's
I want 14% more preparation.
Yeah. It's funny, isn't it? But I'm very like, I try and be grace-led with it, because it's like you got to treat others how you want to be treated. If I'm late, I don't want to be made to feel bad about it. I already feel bad. that I'm late.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. You know you're late. Yeah.
I know I'm late. I know.
Yeah.
Practice. You know what I mean? And it's just like you don't have to make it worse for people. You know, we're all just trying to do this thing, man. You know.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good thing. Another thing I've been thinking about a lot lately is trying to first work out where someone's coming from and what their life is like before I get pissed off with them. You know what I mean? So like I'll be, you know, if you're late, for example, instead of just going, why can't he be on time? Everybody else was on time. I can rather go, hey James, what's going on, man? How you doing? And you're like, man, you have no idea. The kids were going crazy or whatever. And then you can go. It gives you context to have empathy, and then say, oh, "Gosh, okay." Or you know, or when people treat me like super weird on an airplane or something like that, instead of just going, "What an absolute idiot!" I leave that guy. Instead of going like, "Hey, maybe that dude's had like a radical life." You know, you don't know what that guy's been through, and so you can't measure everybody with the same stick. You know what I mean?
You can't beat everyone with the same stick, Daniel.
I remember that rule in England where you're allowed to hit your wife with a stick as long as it wasn't thicker than your thumb. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
No.
There was an old law back in the day where you're allowed to beat your wife, but you weren't allowed to beat them with a stick that was thicker than your thumb. Like, what about if you're like a bass player with the biggest thumb known to man, and you're just like, oh, God,
wow.
Oh, that's a sharp turn in the wrong direction. Sorry, boys.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, we probably need to wrap it up soon. I did want to touch on your, especially after that, but we need to try and steer back. That's where the expression rule of thumb comes from.
Yes.
Ah, no way. Wow. It's legit after all.
Yeah.
David,
I want to
talk the validation.
About humor, because that's like you are a lunatic. And I can remember being in Sweden with you and Brenton. Am I allowed to say? It's a long time ago. In some country in Scandinavia. Very hard church. And we were in the pastor's office. It was like our green room. We were there with the biscuits and the tea and stuff like that.
No.
And you were doing an orangutan impression. You were up on the pastor's desk and just going around like a monkey. And then the guy, you know, obviously the pastor and everyone, they all came in to pray with us before that. And they just like it, you know, they just missed it. But then all the way through the prayer, you were like, in my eye, you know, just making me laugh. And it was just so good, man. And I love it's almost I don't know, sometimes we're not allowed to be ourselves in the church. Like as worship leaders, you have to be this sort of pious, sinless, spotless. You know, you don't find that joke funny, you know. And we all laughed at the joke about the wife beating. You know, it's not really a Christian topic, you know, to be laughing. But it's like there's just this unreality to how we, you know, you get the front of the worship cover. You know, when I had to deal with integrity, you got to look down. The English look down. And it's just like, where, you know, why can't there be a picture of a guy laughing at a joke on the front of a worship album? Or what is this thing? You know, like, am I the only worship leader who like struggles? You know, who like messes up and is tempted by things? and falls, messes up. Am I the only one? I must be the only one, maybe that's why I'm not more popular. I don't know. But, it's just like, can we all just take a breath and be real? Can we just sort of, give these pastors a break as well? Let them mess up, let them swear while they're doing DIY and not lose their job, or do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I feel like it's an interesting thing, but if you can't be yourself, you can only hold on. You can only do a charade for so long, and get away with it. You know what I mean? And these guys that are so serious for all these years, if you can't be yourself in an environment and be allowed to be yourself and have a laugh and laugh at the things that are really weird about it and like about church. And sometimes there's things that everybody's thinking it. So if I say it, they go, "Oh, he said it," but everyone is thinking it already anyway. And and if you allow yourself to just be, and not to be crazy, but like there's got to be an element of you being able to relax and be yourself, let your hair down. Otherwise, I don't think it's sustainable long term. So people might do it for 10 years and really hardcore Christian. And then all of a sudden they wobble completely off the trail, And what's worse, rather be like yourself for the whole stretch than be somebody else for 20 years or 30 years and then be an absolute nightmare after that because you couldn't be yourself. I think there's so much to be said about that. I think if people can't relax and be themselves around people, I think it ends really badly because, like I said, you can't keep that going forever.
No.
Your motivation for doing that is usually, I don't want to mess up so that we can build this really big thing. And at the end of the day, if you really dig to the motivation, it's so that you can have a bigger house and a better car because you're going to get a bigger salary if there's more tithers in the church. And like, let's get to the reality of why are you trying to do this like this? And if you get to that because then once you've got the big house and you get to a certain age and you're like, this hasn't panned out like I'd hoped, then what's the motivation anymore to keep doing it? And then all the mess comes out, So I don't know. I think it's really have to get to the bottom line of why are you even building a church like that, or why does it have to look like this, or why does it have to be like that? What's the bottom motivation? What's the core root reason? And if it's not 100% to be serving the people and to bring glory to God and to whatever, then it's just never going to work long term. I don't know.
I think it's like, in one way, boom.
Good.
It's like we never. I love this thing where David, when he sort of says, "I'm going to go and get Goliath," and he says to Saul, he says, "What does the man get who does this? Who takes him out? What do I get?" And I think he asks it 3 times.
Yeah,
it's like his motives are a bit all over the place.
Yeah.
He's wheeling and dealing. He's like, I'm positioning, I'm posturing.
Yeah.
To get, because this is going to be big. I know I can do this. I know God's anointed me. And then there's that little bit in there that's kind of the dodgy motives.
But I like that he said it. I like that he admitted it.
Yeah, he went for it. And it's in there. They left it in. They didn't take it out. Yeah.
Or the fact that he actually said to Saul, instead of going, maybe if I do this, Saul's going to give me X or Y.
Yeah, that's what I would do. Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll work it out afterwards. It'll be all right. Yeah, I'll play on your album. We'll work out. All right. I'm sure if it sells 1 million, I'll get something.
Great.
Oh, but I think like God has a very like merciful way of not giving you what you want sometimes. I think we can do that with the band. That we felt like we were getting very close to some big breakthroughs, you know, secular things and all that. And then it's like, well, we were in our 20s. Do you know what I mean? How would that have panned out? Who knows?
Yeah.
But maybe not that great for some of us.
Yeah.
And you know, you can kind of, the lockdown is a big leveler, isn't it? Where you're like, wow, I've got these beautiful kids and a place to live, and you know,
absolutely.
I do music and love making music. And I think when you have those pressures, like a big sign of it is like a restlessness in you of wanting to get somewhere else than you are. I think that's, I've noticed that so much in my life. You know, it's like I'm dissatisfied with where things are. I need to, something needs to happen. I need to go somewhere or do something, or and it's not to go places and do things, but I think that restlessness and lack of peace is something I'd love to just completely grow out of and be content in myself. And then I think the creativity that can flow is, I mean, all the pressure's not a great, for me, it's not a great way to make music.
No.
Like music, and it comes from a sense of freedom and joy and connection, or pain, you know, but these days it's more like it's a joy to make music.
Yeah.
And that's what I would wish for my younger self in some of those situations.
Yeah.
Is not the pressure.
Same.
Like it's all resting on this, you know.
Yeah. I remember being, I think I was 16, and Graham Ord, you know how he would sort of like take you to one side and give you a little wisdom bomb. And he said, is it Colossians? It's like godliness with contentment is great gain.
I was there.
Were you there? Yeah, in the high street.
On the high street, yeah.
Yeah. And it felt like a profound moment and a deep mystery.
He got his little out.
Yeah, he did. He got pretty intense on us, right? But it's, I wish I'd spent more time, you know, reflecting on that as a young guy, man. I wish I'd really kind of listened. Such a great verse, man. Such wisdom to kind of impart it. I think we probably got something from that at that moment, but
we both remember. So
yeah, we remember it, right? Yeah.
Most.
Yeah. 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 It's true though. Yeah.
Cool, man. Well, I reckon we should probably wrap it up.
Yeah, it's been so fun.
Love hanging out, and let's do it again sometime.
Yeah.
Thanks for your time, and you know, love to your family and all that.
Yeah, man.
Thank you. See you guys too.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah. Thanks for letting me jump in late. It's great to see you, bro.
You too, man. So good.
So I will end the stream, and hopefully it will actually end, and then we can just say goodbye.
All right,
see you later. See you later, dudes. I gotta run.
Bashara's watching, I think.
Oh, she is.
Mm.
Are we still on?
We're still just about on. Careful what you say. All right. Say goodbye.
See you guys.
Still on. End broadcast.